The first time my daughter asked the question, I nearly dropped an entire tray of coffee. Looking back, I probably should have seen it coming. Emma Brooks had always possessed a dangerous combination of curiosity and honesty. Most adults learned early in life that certain questions weren't polite. Emma hadn't received that lesson yet. Or maybe she had and simply disagreed with it. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 43 years old, a widower, and the owner of Maple Pages. Not completely, just enough. Enough for me to see something unexpected underneath it. Sadness. Real sadness. Emma waited patiently. She wasn't trying to be rude. She genuinely wanted to know. Finally, the woman laughed softly, not because the question was funny, because she didn't seem to know what else to do. That's a very direct question. I know. Emma smiled proudly. That wasn't helping. The woman looked out the window. Rain slid slowly down the glass. Cars moved through the town square. My confusion grew. Sophia looked completely lost. What's going on? Emma smiled proudly. Presentation time. That phrase should never be spoken by a 9-year-old with confidence. We entered the hall. Every chair was occupied except one. A single empty seat stood near the front row, waiting. Sophia stopped walking. I stopped walking. Because suddenly I understood exactly what Emma had done. The seat had a small handwritten card attached to it, not unlike the one from Christmas. Sophia Reynolds. Complete silence filled the room. Sophia stared at the card, then at Emma, then back at the card. What is this? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Emma stepped onto the small stage at the front of the room. The crowd smiled knowingly. Apparently everyone except Sophia and me had been involved, which felt slightly unfair. 3 months ago, Emma began, I asked somebody why she always ate alone. Laughter spread through the room. Sophia covered her face. Oh no. Then I found out something. Emma continued. Sometimes people don't know they belong somewhere until somebody saves them a seat. The room grew quiet again. Sophia wasn't smiling anymore. Her eyes never left the chair. Emma pointed toward the crowd. Everybody here helped me make a list. Mrs. Parker stood up first. You helped organize the library fundraiser. Another resident stood. You raised money for the youth center. Then another. You helped my son apply for college. Another. You fixed the animal shelter budget. Another. You volunteered every weekend. One by one, people stood throughout the room. Teachers, shop owners, parents, retirees. They shared stories, small stories, ordinary stories. The kind that rarely appear in newspapers but somehow matter the most. Every person had one thing in common. Sophia had helped them. Not because she was wealthy, not because she was famous, because she cared. By the time the final person sat down, tears had already appeared in Sophia's eyes. Emma stepped off the stage and walked toward her. You keep acting like you're visiting. Complete silence. But everybody already knows you live here. A few people laughed softly. Others nodded. Sophia looked around the room. Really looked. At the faces, the smiles, the people who had become part of her life without her noticing. Then she looked at the empty chair. Her chair, waiting for her. Again, just like Christmas. Emma. Her voice cracked slightly. My daughter smiled. You don't have to decide today. Sophia blinked. What? About New York. The room became even quieter. Emma pointed toward the crowd. I just wanted you to know what you'd be leaving. No child should be capable of that level of emotional strategy. Absolutely none. Sophia laughed through tears. Then slowly sat down in the empty chair. The room erupted into applause. Warm, genuine, proud. Not because she'd made a decision, because she finally understood the question. It wasn't whether New York wanted her. Of course New York wanted her. It wasn't whether the offer was impressive. Of course it was impressive. The real question was whether success felt like success if you had nobody to share it with. Later that afternoon, after the presentation ended and the festival continued, Sophia and I sat together beside the river that ran through town. Neither of us spoke for a while. The sounds of music and laughter drifted through the spring air. Finally she smiled. Your daughter is terrifying. I laughed. You're not the first person to say that. Sophia looked toward the festival, toward the people. toward the life she'd accidentally built. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone, the same phone that had carried board meetings, investor calls, deadlines, and decisions for years. She opened an email. Read it one final time, then slowly pressed a button, send. My heart immediately sped up. What was that? Sophia looked at me. The tension that had followed her for weeks was gone, completely gone, replaced by something lighter, freer, happier. My answer. I stared at her, and a smile spread across her face. The biggest smile I'd ever seen. I chose Maple Creek. The words settled into the spring air between us. Simple, certain, final. Neither of us realized it yet, but that decision was about to change both our lives. Because choosing Maple Creek wasn't the same thing as choosing a town. It was choosing a future. And for the first time since arriving here, Sophia Reynolds was finally ready to stop eating alone. For a brief moment, she seemed far away. Then she looked back at Emma. I guess. She paused, searching for the answer. I guess nobody's ever asked me that before. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. Emma frowned thoughtfully. Really? The woman nodded. Really? Another pause. Then my daughter delivered the second blow. You look lonely sometimes. My soul left my body. I was certain of it. The woman blinked. Once, twice. Yet instead of becoming offended, choosing Maple Creek should have solved everything. The problem was that life rarely becomes simpler the moment you make the right decision. Sometimes that's when things become complicated. In the days following the spring festival, Sophia seemed different, lighter, more present. The tension that had followed her everywhere since we met was finally gone. She laughed more, slept better, stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes. Even Emma noticed. Your business face disappeared. Sophia looked genuinely relieved. Thank goodness. I didn't like it. Neither did I. For a while, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sophia spent mornings working remotely from the café, afternoons helping with community projects, evenings wandering through town, usually finding some excuse to end up at the bookstore. None of it felt unusual anymore. That was the dangerous part. It had become normal. Sophia Reynolds had become part of our lives so gradually that I couldn't pinpoint when it happened, only that it already had. Then one Tuesday afternoon, the illusion of simplicity shattered. The bookstore was quiet. Emma sat in the children's section reading to a group of younger kids. Sophia occupied her favorite chair near the front window with a stack of novels she'd somehow convinced herself she needed. I was organizing inventory when the bell above the door rang. Looking up, I immediately recognized trouble. 3 people entered wearing expensive suits, New York suits, corporate suits, the kind that didn't belong anywhere near Maple Creek. Sophia saw them at the same moment. Her smile disappeared instantly. Oh no, one of the visitors approached. A woman in her 50s with silver hair and a confident posture. Sophia. Sophia slowly stood. Margaret. The way she said the name told me everything. Important, complicated, dangerous. The woman smiled politely. We need to talk. Emma immediately looked up from her reading circle. That worried me. Whenever Emma became interested in adult conversations, somebody's life usually changed. Sophia led the group toward a quiet corner of the bookstore. They spoke softly, yet not softly enough. Fragments drifted through the shelves. Board vote. Expansion. Reconsider. Opportunity. Once in a lifetime. My stomach tightened. So did Sophia's. 20 minutes later, the meeting ended. The visitors left. The bookstore felt strangely quiet afterward. Sophia remained standing near the history section, staring at nothing. Emma approached first. Naturally. Bad news? Sophia laughed softly. You're getting very good at recognizing that, is it? Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. I joined them. What happened? She took a deep breath. The board wants me back. My stomach sank. I thought you turned them down. I did. Another pause. They don't want me to run the company again. That surprised me. Then what? Sophia looked almost frustrated by the answer herself. They want to build a new headquarters. Okay. In Vermont. Complete silence. Emma blinked. I blinked. Even Sophia seemed annoyed by the irony. Wait. I frowned. They're moving here? Not exactly. She rubbed her forehead. They want me to oversee a major regional expansion. New offices, new investments, new projects. In Maple Creek? Near Maple Creek. Emma immediately smiled. That sounds good. Sophia laughed. That's because you're 9. The problem was that Emma wasn't entirely wrong. On paper, it sounded perfect. Sophia could stay, keep her career, build something new, have both worlds. Yet something about the situation clearly bothered her. What's the catch? I asked. Sophia looked at me, then toward the window. Finally she answered, the catch is that I'd become that person again. Silence followed, because I understood exactly what she meant. The endless meetings, the constant travel, the 70-hour work weeks, the version of Sophia who ate lunch alone every day. Emma understood too, maybe not the details, but the feeling. The lonely version? Sophia looked surprised, then nodded slowly. Maybe. My daughter considered that carefully, then delivered another one of her impossible observations. You know, everyone in the bookstore suddenly seemed nervous. What? Sophia asked. When we met, you had lots of important things. Sophia smiled sadly. I guess I did. Emma shrugged. Now you have people. Complete silence. Again, the little reading group nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. Even I couldn't think of a response. Sophia looked away first. Not because she disagreed, because she didn't. Later that evening, after the bookstore closed, Sophia and I walked along the river path behind town. Spring flowers had begun appearing along the banks. She looked strangely affected, like Emma had somehow found the exact thought she'd been trying not to think. Finally she smiled. Small, genuine, vulnerable. Maybe sometimes I am. Emma considered that answer carefully. Then she slid one of the extra cookies from our plate across the table. You can have this one. The woman stared at the cookie, then at Emma. Then she laughed. A real laugh this time, bright and unexpected. Thank you. She accepted the cookie. For some reason, the water reflected the last light of sunset. Everything felt peaceful. Yet Sophia remained unusually quiet. Finally, she stopped walking. Can I tell you something? Of course. She stared at the river for several seconds. 6 months ago, I would have accepted immediately. I wasn't surprised. I know. That's what scares me. She laughed softly. I don't recognize myself anymore. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman standing beside me wasn't broken. She wasn't lost. She wasn't running away. She looked happier than any version of Sophia I'd seen. Maybe that's because you're finally becoming yourself. The words escaped before I could stop them. Sophia turned toward me. Neither of us looked away. The moment stretched longer than it should have. Longer than friendship. Longer than comfort. Something shifted. Small, quiet, important. Then Emma's voice echoed across the park. There you are. We jumped apart so quickly it was almost embarrassing. My daughter came running down the path carrying a notebook. Good news. I immediately groaned. That's never good news. Emma ignored me. I have a new project. Sophia covered her face. Should we be worried? Absolutely not. The smile on Emma's face suggested the opposite. Then she opened the notebook. On the front page, written in large letters, were 4 words. Find Sophia. A family. Complete silence followed. Sophia stared at the page, then at Emma, then at me, and judging by the expression on my daughter's face, her newest project was about to become the biggest one yet. And judging by the expression on my daughter's face, her newest project was about to become the biggest one yet. The problem was that Emma never understood the difference between a good idea and a life-altering idea. To her, they were usually the same thing. We discovered this the very next morning. I arrived at the bookstore before opening and immediately noticed something unusual. The front display table had been completely rearranged. Again. This happened often. What didn't happen often was finding handwritten signs taped to every shelf. Find your people. Books are better with friends. No one should read alone. My stomach tightened. Emma. Definitely Emma. 20 minutes later, Sophia walked through the door carrying coffee and stopped dead in her tracks. "Oh no," I nodded. "Exactly." She looked around the store. "What happened?" Before I could answer, Emma emerged from the children's section carrying a clipboard. Of course she was carrying a clipboard. "Welcome." Sophia closed her eyes. "Why does that sound threatening?" "Because you're part of the project." I was afraid of that. My daughter smiled proudly, then handed Sophia a sheet of paper. Across the top were the words, "Find Sophia a family." Beneath it was a checklist. Make Sophia laugh. Introduce Sophia to more people. Find Sophia a hobby. Stop Sophia from eating lunch alone. Teach Sophia how to relax. Sophia stared at the page for several seconds, then looked at me. Should I be offended? Honestly? Yes. I'm not sure. To my surprise, Sophia started laughing. Real laughter. The kind that had become increasingly common since she arrived in Maple Creek. Emma pointed dramatically. "See? Progress." The entire morning became a disaster. Or at least that's what Sophia called it. Emma called it community outreach. Every customer who entered the bookstore was somehow introduced to Sophia. Retired teachers, local artists, young parents, volunteers, book club members. At one point, Sophia spent 20 minutes discussing gardening with an 80-year-old widow she'd never met before. "Your daughter is networking me." That's one way to describe it. She's doing it aggressively. The worst part was that it worked. By lunchtime, half the town seemed to know Sophia personally. By evening, 3 people had invited her to community events. One invited her to join a hiking group. Another invited her to a cooking class. A third invited her to a charity fundraiser. Emma checked each item off her list with increasing satisfaction. The following week became even stranger. Everywhere we went, somebody greeted Sophia. People waved from storefronts, stopped to talk in the street, asked her opinion about local projects. It wasn't celebrity, it wasn't status, it was belonging. She was becoming part of the town in a way no amount of money could ever buy. The simple gesture felt more important than it should have. Before leaving, the woman looked at me. "You have an extraordinary daughter. Trust me," I said. "I know." She smiled one final time, then walked toward the door. Just before stepping outside, she turned back. "My name is Sophia Reynolds." Emma waved enthusiastically. "I'm Emma." Then she pointed at me. "That's my dad." Sophia looked at me. "Daniel." I nodded. "Sophia." The funny thing was that she seemed to enjoy it. One afternoon, I found her sitting outside the café laughing with 3 retirees while discussing mystery novels. Another day, she spent an hour helping organize a school fundraiser. The lonely woman who once sat silently by the window was slowly disappearing. Emma noticed too. Mission update. Sophia looked suspicious. "Why does your mission have updates?" "Because it's working." Sophia laughed. Apparently. Then my daughter said something unexpected. "You're different now." For a moment, Sophia seemed surprised. "Different how?" Emma thought carefully. "You look lighter." Complete silence followed, because once again, the child had accidentally found the truth. Sophia smiled softly. "Maybe I am." Yet despite all the progress, something still lingered beneath the surface. I could see it sometimes when Sophia thought nobody was looking. A hesitation, a fear, like she was waiting for something to end. Like she still wasn't completely convinced this life belonged to her. Then came Friday night. The town hosted an outdoor movie in the park. Families spread blankets across the grass. Children ran through the open field. Food trucks lined the edge of the square. The atmosphere felt warm and relaxed. Sophia sat beside me while Emma played with a group of kids nearby. For a while we simply watched the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold above the mountains. The river reflected the fading light. Everything felt peaceful. "Can I admit something?" Sophia asked quietly. "Sure." She looked toward the crowd, families, friends, neighbors, community. "I keep waiting for this to feel temporary." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" She smiled sadly. "I spent so many years believing success meant constantly moving." Another pause. New city, new project, new goal. The smile faded. "I don't know how to trust something that stays." The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. because suddenly I understood. The issue wasn't New York anymore. It wasn't the job offer. It wasn't the company. It was fear. Fear that happiness wouldn't last. Fear that belonging could disappear. Fear of losing something she finally cared about. Before I could answer, Emma came running back carrying 2 cups of lemonade. She handed one to Sophia, then sat between us. Good news. Both of us groaned simultaneously. Emma looked delighted. People keep saying that. Because it's never actually good news, I said. This time it is. She opened her notebook again. My stomach immediately sank. New pages had been added. Lots of new pages. Sophia looked concerned. What now? Emma grinned. The dangerous grin. Phase 2. Complete silence. There are phases? Sophia asked. Of course. My daughter pointed to a freshly written heading. Finn Sophia, a home. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then Sophia laughed so hard she nearly spilled her lemonade. The crowd turned to look. She didn't seem to care, and watching her sit there beneath the evening sky, laughing without restraint, I realized something important. Emma's project had never really been about finding Sophia a family. Sophia had already found one. The real question was whether she was finally ready to admit it. The problem was that only a few days later, an unexpected visitor would arrive in Maple Creek. And this time, the choice facing Sophia wouldn't be about her career. It would be about her heart. The problem was that only a few days later, an unexpected visitor would arrive in Maple Creek. And this time, the choice facing Sophia wouldn't be about her career. It would be about her heart. Monday afternoon began peacefully enough. The bookstore was busy. Spring sunlight poured through the windows. Emma sat at the children's reading corner working on what she called Phase 2 of her project. I had stopped asking questions for my own mental health. Sophia arrived just after lunch carrying coffee and a stack of paperwork she claimed she intended to finish. Nobody believed her, least of all Sophia. She barely opened the folder before getting distracted by customers, conversations, and Emma's constant commentary on life. Everything felt normal, comfortable, familiar, which should have worried me, because every time life felt settled lately, something unexpected happened. Around 3 o'clock, the bell above the bookstore door rang. A strange feeling settled over me as she disappeared into the rain, like something significant had just happened, something I didn't understand yet. The problem was that Emma wasn't finished asking questions, and the next one would force Sophia Reynolds to confront a truth she'd spent years trying to avoid. I looked up automatically, then froze. A woman stepped inside, mid-30s, elegant, confident, long blonde hair, professional clothing. She wasn't from Maple Creek, that much was obvious, yet what caught my attention wasn't her appearance. It was Sophia's reaction. The moment she saw the woman, she stood up so quickly her chair nearly tipped over. "Claire?" The woman smiled, warmly, genuinely. "Hi, Soph." Complete silence filled the bookstore. Emma immediately looked interested, which was dangerous. Sophia looked completely stunned. "What are you doing here?" Claire laughed softly. "That's a nice way to greet your best friend." Best friend. The words landed with unexpected force. Because in all the weeks I'd known Sophia, she'd never once mentioned a best friend. Not one. Not anyone. For the first time, I realized how little I actually knew about her life before Maple Creek. Sophia hurried forward and hugged her. A real hug. Tight. Emotional. The kind reserved for people who matter. When they finally stepped apart, both women looked suspiciously close to tears. Emma appeared beside me. "Who's that?" "No idea. Important though. She wasn't wrong." Sophia introduced us a few minutes later. Claire Morgan. Architect. Boston. Best friend for nearly 15 years. The two women had met long before Sophia became a famous CEO. Long before the money. Long before the business magazines and boardrooms. She practically disappeared for 6 months, Claire informed us. Sophia groaned immediately. "Claire." "What?" Claire looked innocent. "You stopped answering calls." "I was busy." "You were hiding." Complete silence followed. Apparently this was not a new argument. We ended up closing the bookstore early and having dinner together at a small restaurant near the river. The conversation flowed easily, mostly because Claire possessed the same terrifying honesty as Emma. Watching the two of them interact felt like witnessing a natural disaster form in real time. "So you're Daniel," Claire smiled. "I've heard about you." Sophia nearly choked on her water. My heart skipped for reasons I preferred not to examine. "You have?" Claire nodded. "Quite a bit, actually." Sophia covered her face. "Please stop talking." "No." Claire took another bite of pasta. "This is too interesting." Emma looked delighted. "I like her." "Of course you do," Sophia muttered. The evening continued like that. Laughter, stories, friendly embarrassment. Yet underneath it all, I noticed something. Claire kept watching Sophia, not in a judgmental way, in a protective way, like someone checking on a person they love. Finally, near the end of dinner, Claire became serious. "Can I say something?" Sophia immediately looked worried. "That's never a good sign." Claire ignored her, then turned toward me and Emma. "You know what the strange thing is?" Nobody answered. Claire smiled softly. "This is the happiest I've seen her in years." The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet. Sophia stared down at her plate. Emma looked pleased with herself. "I wasn't sure where to look," Claire continued. "Before she came here, she worked constantly." Another pause. She stopped sleeping properly. Another. Stopped seeing people. Her voice softened. Stopped living. Nobody spoke, because nobody needed to. Sophia already knew it was true. Claire reached across the table and squeezed her friend's hand. Then she came to Maple Creek. A small smile appeared. And suddenly she started sounding like herself again. For a long moment, Sophia couldn't speak. When she finally did, her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. Claire nodded. "I know." The honesty of the moment settled over the table. Heavy, emotional, real. Then Emma asked the question, naturally. "Why didn't you tell her?" Claire blinked. "Tell her what?" "That she looked lonely." I closed my eyes. Sophia covered her face. Claire burst out laughing. "Oh," I told her. Everyone looked surprised. Even Sophia. "You did?" Claire nodded. Repeatedly. Then she pointed at Emma. "The difference is that she listened to you." For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Sophia started laughing too. The kind of laugh that comes when the truth finally catches up with you. Later that night, after dinner ended and the town grew quiet, Claire and Sophia walked together along the river while Emma and I followed behind. The sky was filled with stars. The water reflected the moonlight. Everything felt peaceful. At one point, Claire stopped and looked directly at Sophia. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia immediately looked suspicious. "That depends. Are you staying?" The question hung in the cool night air. Sophia looked toward Maple Creek, toward the bookstore, toward the café. The problem was that Emma wasn't finished asking questions, and the next one would force Sophia Reynolds to confront a truth she'd spent years trying to avoid. The following Thursday arrived faster than expected. Spring sunlight replaced the rain. Maple Creek looked brighter somehow. Flower baskets hung from lampposts. Storefront windows displayed colorful decorations for the upcoming spring festival. Life felt lighter, at least it should have. Instead, toward the life she'd built. Then she smiled. Small, certain, honest. "Yeah." Claire smiled back. "Good. That's it?" "That's it." Another pause. Then Claire laughed softly, "Because for the first time in years, you're finally where you're supposed to be." The words stayed with me long after we said goodnight. Because deep down, I suspected she was right. The problem was that neither Sophia nor I had yet confronted the one thing both of us were carefully avoiding, and only a few days later, Emma's Phase 2 project was going to force us to, whether we were ready or not. The problem was that neither Sophia nor I had yet confronted the one thing both of us were carefully avoiding, and only a few days later, Emma's Phase 2 project was going to force us to, whether we were ready or not. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs. Emma had become far too quiet. Whenever my daughter stopped asking questions, it usually meant she was planning something. Something detailed, something dangerous, something that would somehow involve half the town before anyone realized what was happening. Claire noticed it too. She was still visiting Maple Creek for a few more days, and had already learned enough about Emma to be concerned. She's plotting. Definitely. Should we stop her? I considered that. Then shook my head. Too late. Unfortunately, I was right. Saturday morning arrived with bright sunshine and perfect spring weather. The town square buzzed with activity. Farmers sold flowers. Musicians performed near the fountain. Families filled the sidewalks. Everything seemed normal, right up until Mrs. Parker appeared at the bookstore carrying a stack of envelopes. "What's that?" I asked. "Invitations." My stomach immediately tightened. "To what?" Mrs. Parker smiled. "You'll see. That answer never leads anywhere good." By noon, nearly everyone in Maple Creek seemed to have received one. Sophia received one. Claire received one. I received one. Even the mayor received one. Each envelope contained a simple card. Community, appreciation, picnic, Sunday, Riverside Park. Hosted by Emma Brooks. Hosted by Emma Brooks? Sophia stared at the invitation. She's 9. I know. Claire looked impressed. That's somehow more impressive. None of us understood what was happening. Emma refused to explain. Every question received the same response. It's a surprise, which was exactly the problem. Sunday afternoon arrived beneath clear blue skies. Riverside Park overlooked the river running through Maple Creek. Long picnic tables filled the grass. Flowers decorated every surface. Food covered nearly every available inch of table space. Somehow, Emma had convinced half the town to help organize the event. I wasn't sure whether to be proud or afraid, probably both. By 3 o'clock, nearly everyone had arrived. Families, friends, neighbors, volunteers, business owners, teachers. It felt less like a picnic and more like a festival. Sophia stood beside me looking around in confusion. "Do you know what's happening?" "Not even slightly." Claire joined us, carrying lemonade. "Good, good?" Sophia asked. "If neither of you knows, this will be much more entertaining." That wasn't reassuring. Then Emma climbed onto a small wooden platform near the center of the park. A microphone waited for her. The crowd immediately quieted. I closed my eyes. "Here we go. Thank you for coming." Emma smiled confidently. The terrifying thing was that she wasn't nervous at all. A few months ago, I met somebody who always ate lunch alone. Laughter spread through the crowd. Sophia covered her face immediately. "No. Yes." Emma pointed directly at her. The entire town turned toward Sophia. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the river. At first I thought the problem was that she needed friends. More laughter. Then I thought she needed a family. Sophia groaned. Claire was laughing too hard to be helpful. Emma continued. But then I figured out something important. The crowd grew quiet again. "She already has those." Complete silence followed. Sophia slowly looked up. Emma pointed toward the people gathered around the park. The teachers she'd helped, the families she'd supported, the volunteers she'd worked beside, the neighbors who now greeted her by name. "They're right here." For a moment nobody moved, nobody spoke. I spent most of the week wondering why I kept thinking about a woman I'd spoken to for less than 2 minutes. Not in a romantic way. Not yet. It was more curiosity than anything else. There was something unusual about Sophia Reynolds. Something that didn't fit. People didn't normally arrive in small Vermont towns carrying expensive laptops and perfectly tailored coats. They certainly didn't spend 3 weeks sitting alone in the same café every Thursday. Yet there she was. By Thursday afternoon, the truth of it settled gently over the crowd. Then Emma smiled. "So, Phase 2 is officially complete." Applause erupted throughout the park. Sophia laughed through visible tears. There were phases. There were phases. My daughter nodded proudly. Lots of phases. The crowd eventually settled down. I assumed the event was over. Unfortunately, Emma wasn't finished. "There's one more thing." My heart immediately sank. Sophia looked alarmed. Claire looked. Emma reached beneath the podium and pulled out a large poster board. "Oh no," Sophia whispered. "Oh yes," Claire whispered back. Emma turned the board around. Across the top were 3 enormous words. "Find Daniel happiness." The entire park exploded with laughter. I nearly walked into the river. "Emma." My daughter looked confused. "What?" Sophia was laughing so hard she couldn't speak. Even Mrs. Parker was wiping tears from her eyes. "Sweetheart," I said carefully, "absolutely not." "Why?" "Because. That's not a reason." Unfortunately, she had inherited my stubbornness. The crowd clearly enjoyed my suffering. Emma pointed dramatically at me. "Dad spends all his time helping everybody else." More laughter. "He deserves happiness too." Then she looked at Sophia. The smile slowly disappeared from her face. What remained was something softer, more sincere. "And I think you already know what makes him happy." Complete silence. The laughter vanished instantly. The entire park froze. Every person, every conversation, every sound, gone. Sophia stared at Emma, then at me, then back at Emma. Nobody knew what to say, least of all me. Claire quietly stepped backward. "Traitor. Absolute traitor." Emma smiled innocently. "Okay, bye." Then she climbed off the platform and ran away before anyone could stop her. The crowd erupted into nervous laughter. Conversations slowly resumed. People pretended not to stare. Failed completely. I stood frozen beside the river. Sophia stood frozen beside me. Neither of us moved. Finally, after what felt like an hour, she laughed softly. "Your daughter is impossible." "I know." Another silence followed, different this time, more fragile, more important. Then Sophia looked out across the water. "You know the worst part?" "What?" A smile appeared. Small, nervous, honest. "I think she's smarter than both of us." For the first time, neither of us laughed, because deep down, we both knew she was right. And standing beside the river beneath the warm spring sunlight, I realized something had finally changed. The question was no longer whether Sophia belonged in Maple Creek. The question was whether she belonged with us. The problem was that neither of us was brave enough to answer it yet. But that was about to change. Because Claire Morgan had plans of her own. And unlike Emma, she had absolutely no interest in being subtle. The problem was that neither of us was brave enough to answer the question yet. But that was about to change. Because Claire Morgan had plans of her own. And unlike Emma, she had absolutely no interest in being subtle. The first warning came on Tuesday morning. Claire walked into the bookstore carrying coffee and a suspicious smile. By now, everyone in Maple Creek had learned to fear suspicious smiles, especially when they came from women who spent too much time around Emma Brooks. "Good morning," Claire said. "No," she blinked. "No, what?" "Whatever you're planning." Claire looked offended. "Daniel, that hurts." "Is it supposed to?" "A little." Unfortunately, she wasn't alone. Emma appeared from behind a bookshelf carrying a notebook. My soul immediately left my body. "You two have been meeting." Emma nodded proudly. "We're a committee now." Sophia, who had just entered through the front door, froze. "A committee?" Claire smiled. "It's very official." Sophia looked genuinely alarmed. "That's the most frightening sentence I've heard all year." The problem was that nobody would explain what the committee actually did. Every question received vague answers. Every attempt to investigate ended in failure. Even Mrs. Parker refused to talk, which meant the situation was serious, very serious. 3 days later, we discovered the truth, or at least part of it. Maple Creek hosted an annual spring gala every May. It wasn't fancy by New York standards. No celebrities, no luxury ballrooms, no television cameras. Just a community celebration held in the renovated town hall overlooking the river. Live music, dinner, dancing, local fundraising. The kind of event that mattered because people cared, not because it was important. I hadn't attended since my wife passed away. There never seemed to be a reason. Apparently, Emma disagreed. Friday afternoon, Emma was practically vibrating with anticipation. "Do you think she'll be there?" "I have no idea. I think she will." "Based on what?" "The universe." That answer explained absolutely nothing. We entered the café at exactly 4 o'clock. Emma immediately searched the room, then smiled triumphantly. "See?" Sophia sat at the same table near the back window. Same laptop, same coffee, same thoughtful expression. It was almost comforting somehow. The moment she noticed us, she marched into the bookstore and placed 2 envelopes on the counter, one in front of me, one in front of Sophia. I immediately knew I wasn't going to like this. What's that? Invitations. Sophia narrowed her eyes. To what? Emma smiled. The dangerous smile. The spring gala. Neither of us moved. Okay, I said carefully. And? Emma pointed at the envelopes. Open them. Against my better judgment. I did. Inside was a formal invitation, along with a handwritten note. Daniel, please attend the spring gala. You are not allowed to say no. Signed, everyone. Across the counter, Sophia opened hers, then immediately laughed. Mine says the same thing. See? Emma folded her arms. The town has spoken. Claire appeared from nowhere. Literally nowhere. One moment she wasn't there. The next, she was standing beside Emma. It's a community decision. You people held meetings, didn't you? Claire smiled proudly. Several. The gala was the following evening, which gave Sophia and me 24 hours to become increasingly uncomfortable. By Saturday afternoon, half the town seemed invested in whether we would attend. Customers asked about it, neighbors asked about it, even the mailman asked about it. Maple Creek had apparently decided this was now public business. The situation became significantly worse when Sophia arrived at the bookstore that evening. For a moment, I forgot how to speak. She wore a simple navy dress, elegant, understated, beautiful, the kind of beauty that didn't demand attention because it didn't need to. Sophia immediately noticed my expression. What? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Emma appeared behind me. Dad forgot English. Traitor. Complete traitor. Sophia laughed. A faint blush touched her cheeks. You clean up pretty well yourself. Somehow that didn't help. The gala began at 7. The town hall glowed with lights reflected off the river below. Music drifted through open windows. Couples arrived together. Families gathered near the entrance. Friends laughed and posed for photographs. For the first time in years, I felt nervous attending a social event. Sophia looked equally uncomfortable. This is ridiculous. Agreed. We're adults, supposedly. Then why am I nervous? I considered that carefully. No idea. That was a lie. We both knew it. The evening started normally enough. Dinner, conversation, fundraising presentations, community awards. Yet every time I looked across the room, I found Sophia looking back. Every single time. It became impossible to ignore. Around 9 o'clock, the band started playing slower music. The dance floor gradually filled. Couples stepped beneath the lights. Laughter echoed through the hall. Sophia stood beside the balcony overlooking the river. Watching. Not dancing. Not moving. Just watching. I found myself walking toward her before consciously deciding to. Dangerous. Very dangerous. You okay? She smiled. Yeah. Then she looked toward the dance floor. You? Yeah. Another silence followed. Comfortable. Familiar. Then Sophia laughed softly. They're watching us. I followed her gaze. Across the room stood Claire, Mrs. Parker, Emma, the mayor, 3 teachers, half the town, all pretending not to stare. They were failing spectacularly. Subtle. Sophia shook her head. Not their strongest quality. Music drifted across the balcony. The river shimmered beneath moonlight. The town hall lights reflected across the water. Everything felt strangely still. Then Sophia turned toward me. For the first time all evening, the nervousness disappeared. What remained was honesty. Can I ask you something? My heart immediately accelerated. Sure. She hesitated. Not because she didn't know the question, because she already knew the answer mattered. When Emma first asked why I always ate alone, a small smile appeared. Did you think she was right? The question caught me off guard. Completely. I looked toward the river, then back at Sophia. Finally, I answered honestly. Yeah. She nodded slowly. No surprise. No offense. Just understanding. I did too. Another silence. Longer this time. Then she whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. I don't think I am anymore. The words settled gently between us. Simple, honest, life-changing, and standing beneath the lights of the spring gala, I realized that for the first time since we'd met, Neither of us was talking about loneliness anymore. The problem was that one final step still remained, and before the night ended, somebody was going to take it. A small smile appeared. Not a polite smile, one of recognition, the kind people reserved for familiar faces. That alone surprised me. Emma waved enthusiastically. Sophia waved back. "Well," my daughter announced, "we're friends now." I decided not to challenge that logic. 20 minutes later, Sophia stood to order another coffee. Before I could stop her, Emma jumped from her seat. "I'm going to say hi." My fate as a parent was apparently sealed. To my surprise, the problem was that one final step still remained. And before the night ended, somebody was going to take it. Looking back, I should have known exactly who that somebody would be. It certainly wasn't me. I had spent 6 years becoming very good at avoiding risks that involved my heart. Sophia wasn't much better. For all her confidence in boardrooms and business negotiations, she became surprisingly cautious whenever something actually mattered, which left only one possibility: Emma. The dance continued inside the town hall. Music drifted through open doors. Laughter echoed across the balcony, overlooking the river. Sophia and I stood side by side beneath strings of warm lights, neither quite ready to return inside, neither quite ready to leave. The conversation had shifted into something new, something honest, something neither of us wanted to interrupt. Then the balcony door burst open. "Found you." Sophia immediately laughed. Of course. Emma walked outside carrying 2 folded pieces of paper. Claire followed behind her looking entirely too pleased with herself. "I had nothing to do with this," Claire announced. Nobody believed her. "Not one thing." "You're smiling," I pointed out. "That's not evidence." It absolutely was. Emma handed one paper to Sophia and one to me. My stomach tightened instantly. "What's this?" "Homework." "No." "Yes." Sophia accepted hers with visible suspicion. "Why do I feel like this violates several international laws?" "Because you're dramatic." Emma folded her arms. "Open them." Against our better judgment, we did. The paper contained only one question: "What makes you happiest?" For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Sophia laughed softly. "That's it?" "That's it." Emma nodded. "Answer honestly." "And then?" "Then we'll see." Which was not comforting. The 4 of us eventually found a small table near the edge of the balcony. Music continued playing inside. The river flowed quietly below. Spring air carried the scent of flowers from the town square. For several minutes nobody wrote anything. Then slowly, pens began moving. I finished first, folded the paper, set it down. Sophia took longer, much longer. When she finally finished, she stared at the answer for several seconds before folding it. Emma immediately collected both papers. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Sophia sounded uncertain. "Now what?" Emma grinned. The dangerous grin. "Now we compare." "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "Absolutely yes." Before either of us could stop her, Emma opened my paper, then smiled. Ah, that reaction alone nearly killed me. "Emma." She ignored me. Of course she did. Then she read aloud. "Watching Emma laugh. Running the bookstore. Spending time with people I love." My face immediately turned red. Claire looked delighted. Sophia looked down at the table, smiling. Emma opened the second paper. Suddenly her expression softened. "Oh." The change caught everyone's attention. Sophia looked nervous. "What?" Emma glanced at her, then quietly read the answer, feeling like I belong somewhere. Complete silence. No laughter, no teasing, no jokes, just silence. The answer hung in the night air between us. Honest, vulnerable, real. Sophia looked away first, toward the river, toward the lights reflecting on the water. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Emma did something unexpected. She placed both papers side by side on the table. "Those are basically the same answer." I blinked. Sophia blinked. Claire covered her mouth to hide a smile. "Emma." "What?" "They're not the same." My daughter looked genuinely confused. "Sure they are." She pointed at my paper. "People you love." Then at Sophia's. "Belonging somewhere." Another pause. "That's people." Nobody could argue with that logic, not because it was perfect, because it was true. Sophia stared at the papers for several seconds, then laughed softly. You know what's annoying? What? Claire asked. She's right. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Dancing, music, conversation, community. Yet something had changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, just enough. A wall had come down. A truth had been spoken aloud. Neither Sophia nor I could pretend not to know it anymore. Near midnight, the gala finally ended. Families headed home. Volunteers cleaned tables. Lights began turning off throughout the hall. Soon only a handful of people remained. Emma had fallen asleep in a chair near the entrance. Claire was helping stack decorations. The river below reflected the moonlight. Sophia and I stood outside beneath the stars. Neither of us seemed eager to leave. Can I tell you something? She asked quietly. Of course, she smiled, small, nervous, honest. When I first came to Maple Creek, I planned to stay 3 days. I laughed softly. 3? Sophia didn't seem bothered by the interruption. Hello again. Emma smiled. Hi. Then she immediately launched into business. Did you eat alone all week? I nearly walked into a wall. Sophia covered her mouth to hide a laugh. That is an impressively direct follow-up question. I was curious, clearly. Sophia leaned against the counter, and yes. Every day? Mostly. Emma frowned. Why? The question sounded simpler this time. Less shocking, more sincere. Sophia hesitated. Maybe 4 if I was feeling adventurous. What happened? Sophia looked toward the sleeping little girl visible through the town hall window, then toward the bookstore down the street. Then finally at me. A 9-year-old asked me why I always ate alone. The answer settled warmly between us. For a long moment, neither of us looked away. Then Sophia took a step closer. Not much, just enough. My heart immediately forgot how to behave. So did hers, judging by her expression. We were standing on the edge of something important. Both of us knew it. Both of us felt it. Neither of us quite knew how to cross it. Fortunately, fate decided to help, because at that exact moment, Emma suddenly woke up, looked through the window, saw us standing together beneath the stars, and smiled. Then she whispered 5 words to herself before falling asleep again. 5 words that would change everything. Finally, it's about time. And the next morning, Sophia Reynolds was going to do something neither of us expected. And the next morning, Sophia Reynolds was going to do something neither of us expected. The problem was that life-changing moments rarely announce themselves in advance. They don't arrive with dramatic music or flashing lights. Most of the time, they look like an ordinary morning. Sunday began quietly. The spring gala was over. Maple Creek seemed slower than usual. People slept in. Shops opened late. The town was enjoying the calm that follows a successful celebration. I arrived at the bookstore shortly before 10. Emma was still asleep. Claire had already left for Boston at sunrise, though not before delivering approximately 17 pieces of unsolicited advice. Most of them involved Sophia and me. I was still trying to recover. The bookstore was empty when I unlocked the front door. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The familiar scent of paper and coffee filled the room. Everything felt normal. Then I noticed an envelope sitting on the counter. My name was written across the front. Daniel. Nothing else. My stomach immediately tightened. I recognized the handwriting. Sophia. For one terrifying second, I thought she was leaving. The fear hit harder than it should have, harder than I wanted to admit. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single note. Meet me at the café. Noon. Please don't overthink this. I laughed despite myself. Too late. By 11:30, I'd already overthought it at least 50 times. By noon, probably 100. The café was unusually quiet. Only a few customers occupied the tables. Sunlight poured through the windows. Everything looked exactly the same as the day we first met. The same corner table, the same view of Main Street, the same place where Emma had asked a simple question that changed all our lives. Sophia was already there when I arrived. She stood as I approached, smiling nervously, which immediately made me nervous. Hi. Brilliant start. We sat down. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then Sophia laughed softly. This is ridiculous. A little. I run billion-dollar negotiations. I've heard. Why is this harder? I smiled. No idea. Another silence followed. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Finally, Sophia took a deep breath, then looked directly at me. I got another offer. My stomach dropped. Immediately. She saw the reaction and shook her head. Not that kind. Relief arrived so fast it was embarrassing. Sophia smiled slightly. See? Great. Now she knew. What kind? I asked. Sophia looked out the window toward Main Street, toward the bookstore, toward Maple Creek, toward the life she'd chosen. Then she smiled. A house. I blinked. A house? She nodded. The one near the lake. Recognition hit instantly. Everyone in town knew that house. White porch, blue shutters, walking distance from the square, beautiful view. You're buying it? Sophia nodded again. Then her expression softened. If I'm staying. A small laugh escaped her. I figured I should actually stay. The words settled warmly between us. She wasn't talking about real estate. Not really. She was talking about roots, commitment, a future. For the first time, Sophia Reynolds wasn't keeping an exit plan. She wasn't preparing for the next city or the next opportunity. She was building a life. Right here. Then she reached into her bag and removed something else. A photograph. She slid it across the table. A small, independent bookstore in the center of Maple Creek, Vermont. It wasn't the kind of business that made anyone rich, but it paid the bills, kept a roof over our heads, and allowed me to spend every day surrounded by stories. After losing my wife 6 years earlier, stories had become one of the few things that helped make sense of the world. That, and my daughter. Emma was 9 years old and somehow managed to be both the easiest and most difficult person I'd ever known. Not because she didn't understand, because she seemed to be considering whether to answer honestly. Finally, she looked down at Emma. Have you ever had a friend move away? Emma nodded. Last year. Did you miss them? A lot. Sophia smiled gently. Sometimes people leave for reasons that aren't easy to fix. The answer sounded personal. Very personal. Emma considered it carefully. Is that what happened to you? For a brief second, something flickered across Sophia's face. Sadness. I looked down. It was the picture I'd seen months earlier in the café. The one she always carried. The one she'd hidden away every time someone got too close. This time she didn't hide it. The photograph showed Sophia and Ethan standing together years ago. Smiling. Happy. Full of plans. I carried this everywhere. Her voice remained calm. Even after everything ended. I looked up. Sophia smiled sadly. I thought letting go meant forgetting. Another pause. Turns out it just means making room for something new. Then she folded the photograph once. Carefully, deliberately, and placed it inside an envelope. Finished. Not erased. Finished. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Sophia laughed softly. You know what's funny? What? Her eyes met mine. I came to Maple Creek because I wanted to be alone. The smile widened. Warmer now. Happier. That plan didn't work out very well. I laughed. Emma tends to ruin those kinds of plans. Thank goodness. The answer came immediately. Without hesitation. Without fear. Thank goodness. And suddenly there it was. The thing we'd both been avoiding for months. The truth. Simple. Obvious. Impossible to ignore. Sophia reached across the table, slowly, giving me every opportunity to step back. I didn't. Her hand found mine, warm, certain, real. Daniel, just my name, nothing else. Yet somehow it said everything. I squeezed her hand gently. Neither of us looked away. Outside, life continued. People walked past the café. Cars moved through town. The world kept turning. Yet for a moment, everything felt still. Then a familiar voice shattered the moment completely. I knew it. We both jumped. Emma stood outside the café window with her hands pressed against the glass. Mrs. Parker stood beside her. So did the mayor. And apparently half the town. They erupted into cheers the second we noticed them. Sophia laughed so hard she nearly cried. I covered my face. How long have they been there? Long enough, Sophia said between laughs. We stepped outside moments later. The celebration that followed was completely ridiculous. And completely perfect. Emma threw her arms around both of us. Mrs. Parker claimed she had won a bet. The mayor demanded credit. Nobody behaved normally, least of all Emma. Finally, as the laughter settled and the afternoon sun warmed the streets of Maple Creek, my daughter looked up at Sophia. So, Sophia smiled. So, Emma grinned. Do you still eat lunch alone? For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Sophia looked at me, looked at Emma, looked at the town that had become home, the family she never expected to find, the life she never planned to live. And she smiled. The happiest smile I'd ever seen. Not anymore. And that was how a lonely CEO stopped eating alone. Not because she found success. She already had that. Not because she found money. She already had plenty. But because one little girl asked the question nobody else asked. Why do you always eat alone? Sometimes the smallest questions create the biggest changes, and sometimes all it takes to change a life is saving someone a seat at the table. The end. Regret. Memory. Then it disappeared. Something like that. The conversation ended there. Or at least I thought it did. Later, after Sophia returned to her table, Emma sat quietly stirring her hot chocolate. That should have worried me. My daughter only became quiet when she was thinking, and thinking usually led to action. Finally, she looked up. Dad. What? She's sad. I sighed. You don't know that. I do. Emma glanced toward Sophia. People smile differently when they're sad. Children should not be allowed to notice things like that. The following week brought another surprise. Sophia appeared in the bookstore. I was unpacking a shipment of novels when the front bell rang. Looking up, I found her standing in the doorway. Sunlight spilled through the windows behind her. For a moment she seemed uncertain, almost nervous, which made no sense considering she was one of the most confident women I'd ever met. Hi. Hi. Brilliant conversation so far. Sophia laughed softly. Emma told me this was your bookstore. She tells everyone everything. I've noticed. She wandered slowly between the shelves, running her fingers across book spines, studying displays, looking surprisingly comfortable. It's beautiful in here. Thanks. How long have you owned it? 10 years. Her expression softened. You must love it. I looked around the store. The shelves. The reading chairs. The little bell above the door. Yeah, the answer came easily. I do. Something changed in Sophia's eyes when I said it. Something thoughtful. Like she couldn't remember the last time she felt that way about her own work. We spent nearly an hour talking. Books. Maple Creek. The Spring Festival. Life in general. Conversation flowed far more naturally than I expected. Eventually, Sophia selected 3 novels and carried them to the register. As I scanned the books, I noticed a business magazine sticking out of her bag. A photograph on the cover caught my attention immediately. It was Sophia, standing in front of a skyscraper, wearing a dark suit. The headline stretched across the page, "The Woman Who Built a Billion-Dollar Empire." My brain stopped working for a moment. Sophia noticed where I was looking, then sighed. I was hoping nobody here read that magazine. You're a CEO? She laughed softly. Apparently. Suddenly several things made sense. The expensive clothes, the laptop, the constant work, the guarded loneliness. Yet somehow the information didn't change anything. She still looked exactly the same standing in my bookstore. Not like a billionaire. Not like a corporate icon. Just like Sophia. Emma is going to lose her mind when she finds out. Sophia groaned. Please don't tell her. Why? Because next week she'll ask me 14,000 questions. I considered that. Then nodded. That's a reasonable concern. For the first time all afternoon, Sophia laughed without reservation. Bright, genuine, happy. And watching her stand there among the bookshelves, I realized something strange. The lonely woman in the café wasn't slowly becoming part of our lives. Somehow, without either of us noticing, she'd already become part of them. The problem was that neither Emma nor I knew the real reason Sophia Reynolds had come to Maple Creek, and when the truth finally surfaced, it would change everything. The problem was that neither Emma nor I knew the real reason Sophia Reynolds had come to Maple Creek, and when the truth finally surfaced, it would change everything. The following week passed in a way that felt both ordinary and strangely important. Sophia continued appearing every Thursday at the café. She stopped by the bookstore twice, once to buy a novel. The second time, according to her, because she needed another novel. Neither of us believed that explanation. By now, even the townspeople had started noticing her. Maple Creek wasn't a place where strangers stayed unnoticed for long. It was the kind of town where people knew your favorite coffee order before they learned your last name. The kind of town where newcomers automatically became topics of conversation. Sophia seemed unaware of this. Or maybe she simply didn't care. One Tuesday afternoon, Emma sat behind the bookstore counter coloring pictures while I organized inventory. Easy because she found happiness in almost everything. Difficult because she noticed things most people preferred to ignore, including lonely strangers. The story began on a rainy Thursday afternoon in early April. Winter had finally released its grip on Maple Creek. Small patches of green were returning to the town square. Flower boxes had begun appearing beneath shop windows. The annual spring festival was only a few weeks away. Life seemed to be waking up again. Every Thursday after school, the front door opened and Mrs. Parker walked inside carrying a stack of donated books. She was 72 years old and somehow knew everything that happened within 50 miles. Daniel, Mrs. Parker. She placed the books on the counter, then immediately lowered her voice. Who's the woman? I closed my eyes. Here we go. Which woman? The beautiful brunette who keeps visiting your bookstore. Emma looked up immediately. Sophia. Mrs. Parker pointed at her. See? Even the child knows. I sighed. She's just a customer. The older woman gave me a look that suggested she had survived decades of bad excuses and wasn't impressed by this one. Then she wandered away toward the history section. Crisis temporarily avoided. Unfortunately, Emma wasn't finished. Dad. No. You don't know what I'm asking. I know enough. Do you like Sophia? I nearly dropped a box of books. Across the room, Mrs. Parker suddenly became very interested in a shelf she had already examined 3 times. Traitor. Emma. What? That's not a question you ask people. Why? The terrifying thing was that she genuinely wanted an answer. Before I could formulate one, the bell above the door rang again. Sophia walked in carrying 2 coffees. My luck officially abandoned me. Perfect timing. Emma smiled. We were talking about you. Sophia immediately looked suspicious. Should I be concerned? Yes, I answered. Probably. Sophia laughed and handed me a coffee. I figured you might need this. The simple gesture caught me off guard. It wasn't the coffee. It was the fact that she'd thought about it. Remembered. Emma noticed too. Her grin became dangerous. Thankfully, Sophia remained unaware. The afternoon passed pleasantly. Customers came and went. Sophia browsed books. Emma talked non-stop. Life felt surprisingly normal. Then everything changed. It happened around 4:30. Sophia's phone rang. The moment she saw the screen, her entire expression shifted. The warmth disappeared. Her shoulders tightened. Her smile vanished. I'd seen it before. Every time work intruded. Every time her other life reached into this one. I should take this. She stepped outside. Through the front window, I could see her standing on the sidewalk. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes, yet whatever was said clearly mattered. By the time she returned, she looked exhausted. Everything okay? I asked. Sophia forced a smile. Just work. The answer felt automatic. Practiced. Emma studied her carefully, then quietly returned to her coloring book. That worried me more than questions ever could, because Emma only stopped asking questions when she thought she already knew the answer. Sophia left shortly afterward. The bookstore felt strangely empty after she was gone. Around closing time, Emma finally spoke. She cried. I looked up. What? Outside. My stomach tightened. You saw that? Emma nodded. Just a little. The statement hit harder than expected, because I hadn't seen it. I'd only seen the smile she wore afterward. the one she used to convince everyone she was fine. The next day brought the truth, or at least part of it. I was delivering a box of books to the library when I stopped at the café for coffee. The place was unusually crowded. As I waited in line, two businessmen entered wearing expensive suits that looked completely out of place in Maple Creek. One of them carried a briefcase. The other looked stressed. They headed directly toward Sophia's usual table. My curiosity immediately woke up. Sophia arrived 10 minutes later. The moment she saw the men, she stopped walking. Not dramatically, just enough. Then she joined them. I couldn't hear every word, only fragments. Board meeting, investors, the merger, New York, 3 weeks. You can't stay here forever. The final sentence reached me clearly. Sophia didn't respond immediately. She simply stared out the cafe window toward Main Street, toward the bookstore, toward the town she'd somehow become part of. Finally she spoke, quietly, yet firmly. "Watch me." The two men exchanged concerned looks. I nearly smiled. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. The businessmen left first. Sophia remained behind, sitting alone at her table, looking more tired than I'd ever seen her. For a long moment, she simply stared into her coffee. Then she reached into her bag and removed a photograph. I couldn't see it clearly, only enough to recognize two people standing together. Sophia studied the picture for several seconds, then slipped it away again. Whatever memory lived inside that photograph clearly hurt, and for the first time since meeting Sophia Reynolds, I began to understand something important. Emma and I visited the same café 2 blocks from the bookstore. It had become our tradition after my wife passed away. Hot chocolate for Emma, black coffee for me. 1 hour together before homework, dinner, and the rest of life took over. The café sat on the corner of Main Street beneath a faded green awning. Warm lighting, wooden floors, comfortable chairs. The kind of place where people stayed longer than they planned. We entered just after 4 o'clock. She hadn't come to Maple Creek for a vacation. She hadn't come for work. She had come here to heal from something. The problem was that old wounds have a way of following people, and only 2 days later, one of those wounds was about to arrive in town in person. The problem was that old wounds have a way of following people, and only 2 days later, one of those wounds was about to arrive in town in person. Saturday morning began like any other. Maple Creek's farmers market filled the town square. Vendors sold flowers, fresh bread, handmade crafts, and enough maple products to supply the entire state. Emma and I spent the morning helping set up a community reading booth sponsored by the bookstore. It was one of her favorite events, mostly because she got to tell people which books they should read, whether they asked or not. Around 11 o'clock, Sophia arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag from the bakery. By now, it felt normal seeing her, which was strange considering we'd only known each other a few weeks. Morning. Emma immediately grabbed the paper bag. "You brought pastries." Sophia looked innocent. "Maybe. I like you. That's a relief." The 3 of us spent the next hour wandering through the market, looking at flowers, sampling baked goods, listening to local musicians perform near the fountain. Sophia seemed happier than I'd ever seen her. Relaxed, comfortable, present. Not the guarded woman who first sat alone in the cafe, not the exhausted executive who took stressful calls every afternoon. Just Sophia. Then everything changed. It happened so quickly I almost missed it. We were standing near a flower stall when Sophia suddenly stopped walking. Completely stopped. Her smile vanished. Her body stiffened. Every trace of warmth disappeared from her face. Following her gaze, I saw a black luxury sedan parked across the street. A man stepped out. Tall, expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of confidence that looked practiced. Even from a distance, I could tell he didn't belong in Maple Creek. The moment he spotted Sophia, he started walking toward us. Slowly, deliberately. My stomach tightened immediately. "Sophia?" She didn't answer. Emma noticed too. "Who's that?" For several seconds, Sophia simply stared at the approaching man. Then she spoke, very quietly. "A mistake." The answer worried me. The man reached us moments later. He smiled. Charming, polished, completely artificial. "Sophia." The way he said her name made something inside me dislike him instantly. Sophia folded her arms. What are you doing here, Ethan? Ah, there it was, Ethan. The name landed with unexpected weight, because suddenly several pieces of the puzzle started fitting together. The photograph, the sadness, the loneliness, the escape to Maple Creek. Ethan smiled as if this were a pleasant reunion. You stopped returning my calls. I wonder why. His smile faltered slightly. Good. Emma looked between them like she was watching a tennis match. Do you know him? Neither adult answered immediately, which was answer enough. Ethan finally noticed Emma and me standing nearby. His eyes landed on me first, assessing, judging, then on Emma. Friends? Sophia's expression hardened. Yes, one word, sharp enough to cut glass. Something flickered across Ethan's face. Jealousy, perhaps. Irritation. Whatever it wasn't pleasant. Can we talk? Sophia laughed softly. Not because anything was funny, because she couldn't believe the question. You flew across the country for that? Ethan stepped closer. Sophia. The name sounded different now. Familiar. Personal. Dangerous. I made a mistake. The entire market seemed quieter somehow. Or maybe I was simply paying closer attention. Sophia stared at him for several seconds, then shook her head. No. Ethan frowned. No? You made choices. Her voice remained calm, controlled. Those aren't the same thing. For the first time his confidence cracked, just slightly. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Dad. Not now. I think he's the reason she eats alone. I nearly choked. Unfortunately, Sophia heard every word. Ethan did too. Complete silence followed. My daughter immediately realized she might have said something important. Oops. Ethan looked confused. Sophia covered her face. To my complete surprise, she started laughing. Real laughter. The kind that arrives unexpectedly. The tension shattered. Even I couldn't stop smiling. Ethan, however, looked completely lost. The familiar smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the air. Emma immediately headed for our usual table near the front window. Then she stopped walking. Dad. I looked up from the menu. What? She pointed discreetly toward the far corner of the room. She's here again. I followed her gaze. A woman sat alone near the back window. Elegant navy coat. Long dark hair. Laptop open beside a half-finished cup of coffee. She appeared focused on something on her screen, which improved my mood considerably. Eventually, Sophia took a deep breath, then looked directly at him. You should go home, Ethan. Sophia, no. Her voice became firm, final. Whatever you came here to fix should have been fixed 6 months ago. 6 months. There it was. The timeline. The wound. The reason she'd come to Maple Creek. Ethan's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked less like a confident businessman and more like a man who had finally run out of excuses. I never stopped loving you. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Honest. Sophia's expression softened for just a second. Then she shook her head. Maybe. Another pause. But you stopped choosing me. Complete silence. Ethan looked away first. That told me everything. 5 minutes later, he was gone. The black sedan disappeared down Main Street. The market slowly returned to normal. Conversations resumed. Music continued. Life moved on. Yet Sophia remained standing exactly where she was, looking suddenly exhausted. Emma stepped forward. Without hesitation, without fear, she wrapped her arms around Sophia. The gesture was so simple it nearly broke my heart. Sophia hugged her back immediately, closing her eyes, holding on tightly. When she finally pulled away, she looked different, lighter somehow, like a door she'd been carrying for months had finally closed. You okay? I asked. Sophia looked at me, then at Emma, then around the town square she had slowly begun to call home. Finally she smiled. Small, genuine, peaceful. I think so. The answer should have ended the story. Instead, it was only the beginning. Because later that night, Emma would ask Sophia one more question. And unlike the first one, this question would leave both of us speechless. The answer should have ended the story. Instead, it was only the beginning. Because later that night, Emma would ask Sophia one more question. And unlike the first one, this question would leave both of us speechless. The farmer's market closed just after sunset. The last vendors packed their tables. Families drifted home. The streets of Maple Creek grew quiet beneath the glow of old-fashioned street lamps. After everything that had happened with Ethan, none of us felt ready to say goodbye. So we ended up at the café. Our café. At least that was how Emma referred to it now. Sophia sat beside the window with a cup of tea. I had coffee. Emma had hot chocolate despite repeated reminders that spring had officially arrived. Some habits refused to change. For a while, conversation stayed light. Books, festival plans, funny customer stories from the bookstore. Anything except the man who had flown across the country to ask for a second chance. Eventually, Emma disappeared to inspect the dessert display, which left Sophia and me alone for the first time all day. Outside, evening shadows stretched across Main Street. Inside, soft music drifted through the café. The atmosphere felt calm, peaceful. Sophia stared into her tea. "Sorry about today," I frowned. "Why are you apologizing?" "Because it was awkward." I laughed softly. "I've owned a bookstore for 10 years. And you'd be amazed how much drama happens around books." For the first time all evening, she smiled. Then the smile faded. "I didn't expect him to come," I figured. Sophia looked toward the window. "The strange thing is," she hesitated. "A few months ago, seeing him would have ruined my entire week. And now?" She thought about it. Really thought about it. Then slowly shook her head. "Now it just makes me sad." There was no anger in her voice, no bitterness, just acceptance. The kind that comes after a wound finally begins healing. 7 years is a long time," I said quietly. Sophia nodded. Yeah, the answer carried the weight of everything she wasn't saying. 7 years of plans. 7 years of trust. 7 years of believing she'd found her future. Gone. "Do you miss him?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Sophia looked surprised, then thoughtful. Finally, she smiled sadly. "Sometimes I miss who I thought he was." The honesty of the answer hit me harder than expected, because I understood it. After my wife died, there were moments when I missed things that never actually existed anymore. Not because they were real, because they were memories. And memories have a way of becoming kinder over time. Before either of us could continue, Emma returned carrying a chocolate chip cookie the size of a dinner plate. "Good news." "What?" I asked. "I solved your problem." My stomach immediately tightened. Sophia laughed. "Whose problem?" "Both of yours." Yet there was something strangely distant about her expression, like her thoughts were somewhere else entirely. I'd noticed her before. Everyone in town had. She'd arrived in Maple Creek nearly 3 weeks earlier and seemed to spend most afternoons in the café. Always alone, always working, always leaving before sunset. "Okay," I said. "And?" Emma looked at me like I'd missed something obvious. "She's always here. Lots of people are always here. Not like her." Neither of us liked where this was going. Emma climbed into her chair, took a dramatic bite of her cookie, then looked directly at Sophia. "Why don't you have any friends?" The cafe went silent, again. At this point, I was beginning to think my daughter possessed some supernatural ability to locate emotionally dangerous questions. Sophia blinked. Once. Twice. Then looked at me. "Does she do this often?" "Constantly." "That's terrifying." Emma ignored us both. "Well," Sophia laughed softly. The kind of laugh people use when buying time. "I have friends." "Where?" Another excellent question. Sophia opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. For the first time since meeting her, she genuinely seemed unable to answer. Emma leaned forward, curious rather than judgmental. "Do you have anybody you call when you're sad?" Silence. "Anybody you have dinner with?" More silence. "Anybody who knows your favorite movie?" Sophia looked down at her tea. The answer was written all over her face. No, no, no. The realization seemed to hit her in real time, not because Emma was revealing something new, because she was saying it out loud. Sometimes the truth sounds different when someone else says it. Finally, Sophia smiled weakly. "I guess I've been busy." Emma frowned. "Too busy for friends?" Apparently. The little girl thought about that for several seconds, then delivered the line that changed everything. That's kind of a sad way to be rich. Complete silence. Somewhere near the counter, a waitress nearly dropped a tray. I covered my face. Sophia stared at Emma. Then, completely unexpectedly, she burst out laughing. Not polite laughter. Real laughter. Bright laughter. The kind that arrives after a long time away. Tears actually appeared in the corners of her eyes. Okay, she shook her head. That was a little brutal. Emma looked confused. Was it? A little. Another laugh escaped Sophia. Then something changed. Gradually, subtly. Her smile softened. Her eyes drifted toward the window, toward the quiet town outside, toward the bookstore across the street, toward the life she'd stumbled into by accident. Finally, she whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. Maybe she's right. The words hung in the air between us, because deep down, all three of us knew she was. The problem was that neither Emma nor I realized Sophia had just reached a turning point, because later that week, she would receive an offer that could change her entire future, an offer worth millions of dollars, an offer she would have accepted without hesitation 6 months earlier. But now there was one complication she never expected. Maple Creek. The problem was that neither Emma nor I realized Sophia had just reached a turning point, because later that week, she would receive an offer that could change her entire future, an offer worth millions of dollars, an offer she would have accepted without hesitation 6 months earlier. But now there was one complication she never expected. Maple Creek. The offer arrived on Wednesday morning. I didn't know that at the time. Neither did Emma. We were busy preparing for the annual Spring Festival, which transformed the town square into a celebration of flowers, music, books, food, and community. Every business participated. Every family attended. It was one of those events that reminded people why they loved small towns. Around noon, Sophia walked into the bookstore carrying her laptop and looking unusually distracted. That immediately caught my attention. Over the past few weeks, I'd learned to recognize her moods, the relaxed version of Sophia, the thoughtful version, the happy version, the version that appeared after spending time with Emma. This was none of those. This was work. Sophia, the version that arrived after difficult phone calls and complicated decisions. Everything okay? I asked. Sophia smiled automatically. Sure. That answer alone told me something was wrong. Emma noticed too. She was sitting in the reading corner helping a group of children choose books for the festival. The moment she saw Sophia, she walked over. You have your business face. Sophia blinked. My what? Your business face. Emma pointed confidently. The one where you pretend everything's fine. I nearly laughed. Sophia looked personally attacked. I have a business face? Definitely. My daughter nodded. It's your second most used face. That's both impressive and slightly disturbing. Emma accepted this as a compliment. For the next hour, Sophia wandered around the bookstore pretending to browse. She picked up books without reading them. My daughter continued watching the woman. She never talks to anybody. I sighed. Here we go. We ordered our drinks and settled into our booth. Or at least I settled in. Emma kept glancing toward the corner table every few minutes. Eventually, I gave up pretending not to notice. Emma. What? Stop staring. I'm observing. You're staring. There's a difference. Unfortunately, she believed that. 20 minutes later, the woman stood to leave. As she passed our table, started conversations without finishing them, checked her phone every few minutes. By the time the lunch rush ended, even I was starting to feel anxious. Finally, I closed the register and joined her near the travel section. Okay. She looked up. Okay, what? What's going on? For several seconds, she didn't answer. Then she sighed. I got an offer. There it was. From New York? Sophia nodded. A venture capital group. My stomach tightened slightly. Even without understanding all the details, I could hear the significance in her voice. Good offer? She laughed softly. Life-changing offer. Another pause. At least financially. The words lingered between us, because we both understood what they meant. More money, more influence, more prestige, more success. Everything she'd spent her career chasing. Do you want it? I asked. Sophia looked genuinely surprised by the question, then thoughtful, then confused. I don't know. That answer worried her more than the offer itself. I could tell, because a woman like Sophia Reynolds wasn't used to uncertainty. She built companies, made decisions, solved problems. Yet somehow Maple Creek had introduced a question she couldn't easily answer. What if success wasn't enough anymore? That evening, Sophia attended the Spring Festival planning meeting with the rest of the town, which would have sounded ridiculous a month earlier. Yet now nobody thought twice about it. She sat beside Mrs. Parker discussing flower arrangements, helped organize volunteer schedules, even agreed to judge the children's art competition. The transformation was remarkable. At one point, I found myself simply watching her, watching how naturally she fit into a place she'd never intended to stay, watching how often she smiled now, watching how people smiled back. Emma eventually noticed me staring. "Dad." "What? You like her?" I nearly choked on my coffee. Across the table, Sophia looked up. "What?" "Nothing. That's not nothing." Unfortunately, both females in my life now appeared interested in my suffering. Emma folded her arms. "You smiled differently around Sophia." Complete betrayal. Sophia immediately covered her mouth to hide a laugh. "Do I?" "Yes, interesting. I considered moving to another state." The meeting finally ended around 8 o'clock. People headed home. Chairs were folded. Plans were finalized. Soon only a handful of us remained inside the community center. Sophia stood near the window looking out at the town square. The lights from nearby shops reflected softly across the glass. "Beautiful, isn't it?" I said. She nodded. "Yeah." Her voice sounded distant, thoughtful. "What's on your mind?" Sophia was quiet for several moments. Then she turned toward me. For the first time all day, the uncertainty was visible, not hidden, not disguised, just honest. "Do you ever wonder if you're supposed to start over?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about my wife, about losing her, about raising Emma alone, about rebuilding a life I never expected to live. Finally I nodded. "Every day for a while." Sophia looked down. "And?" Eventually I realized something. She waited. "Starting over isn't really about leaving something behind." I smiled slightly. "It's about deciding what you want to carry with you." The room grew quiet. Sophia stared at me for several seconds, then slowly looked away, like the answer meant more than she expected. We left the community center together a few minutes later. The night air felt cool and fresh. Maple Creek glowed beneath rows of spring lights hanging across Main Street. For a while, we simply walked. No rush, no destination. Then Sophia's phone rang. She stopped immediately, looked at the screen, closed her eyes. I knew that expression by now. New York. The call lasted less than a minute. When it ended, she slipped the phone into her pocket. "Bad news?" I asked. Sophia shook her head. "Actually," a small smile appeared. "The opposite." "Then why do you look worried?" Her smile widened. Yet somehow the uncertainty remained. "Because they want my answer by Friday." Friday. 2 days away. The offer. The future. The choice. For the first time since arriving in Maple Creek, the clock had started ticking, and neither of us knew which life Sophia Reynolds was about to choose. Emma looked up from her hot chocolate. Then did something that would alter all of our lives. "Excuse me." The woman stopped, slowly, politely. She looked down at Emma. "Yes?" The voice surprised me. Softer than I expected. Warmer. Emma smiled. "I see you here every week." My entire body tensed. The woman glanced at me. I offered an apologetic expression. She looked amused. "You do?" "Yep." Emma nodded confidently. "Every Thursday." A faint smile touched the woman's lips. For the first time since arriving in Maple Creek, the clock had started ticking, and neither of us knew which life Sophia Reynolds was about to choose. The strange thing was that Friday arrived far too quickly. One moment there were 2 days left, then suddenly there was one. Then there were only a few hours. The entire town was busy preparing for the Spring Festival. Colorful banners appeared across Main Street. Flower displays lined the sidewalks. Vendors assembled booths in the town square. Maple Creek looked alive, hopeful, like a place looking forward instead of backward. Unfortunately, Sophia seemed to be doing the opposite. I noticed it immediately. She arrived at the bookstore just after 10 carrying a coffee she barely touched. Normally, she wandered through the shelves, talked with customers, or helped Emma organize the children's corner. Today, she sat near the window staring at her laptop. Every few minutes she opened an email, read it, closed it, then repeated the process. That's the 5th time. She looked up. What? You've read the same email 5 times. Sophia sighed. Only 5? I laughed softly. Bad sign? Very. Emma appeared beside us carrying a stack of picture books. Did you decide? Sophia blinked. Decide what? The thing. My daughter shrugged. The thing you're worried about. Sometimes I genuinely wondered if Emma could read minds. Sophia smiled weakly. Not yet. Emma looked disappointed. Why not? Because it's complicated. My daughter thought about that answer, then nodded. Adults say that when they don't know what to do. I nearly dropped a book. Sophia stared at her for 3 full seconds before laughing. You know, that's becoming a very annoying talent. Thank you. Apparently, she accepted that as praise. Around lunchtime, Sophia finally told us more about the offer. Not everything, just enough. The venture capital group wanted her to become a managing partner. The salary was enormous, the influence even larger. She would oversee investments worth billions of dollars, travel internationally, build new companies, expand her reputation. It was the kind of opportunity business magazines wrote articles about, the kind of opportunity ambitious people dreamed about. Sounds incredible, I said honestly. Sophia nodded. It is. Yet she didn't sound excited. She sounded tired. That worried me more than anything else. Because a few months ago she would have accepted without hesitation. We both knew it. The problem wasn't the offer. The problem was that somewhere along the way, her definition of success had changed. That afternoon, the entire town gathered in the square to finish preparations for the spring festival. Music played from outdoor speakers. Children ran between booths. Volunteers hung decorations from lampposts. The atmosphere felt festive, hopeful. Sophia joined us. Of course she did. At this point, she was as involved as anyone, maybe more. She spent 2 hours helping set up tables for local charities. Then another hour arranging books for the community reading tent. Watching her work alongside teachers, retirees, students, and small business owners felt strangely surreal. Billionaire CEOs weren't supposed to spend Friday afternoons hanging festival banners. Yet somehow Sophia seemed happier doing exactly that than she'd ever looked, discussing business deals. Emma noticed too. We were hanging decorations when she tugged on my sleeve. Dad, what? Look! I followed her gaze. Sophia stood near the fountain laughing with a group of volunteers. The sunlight caught her hair. She looked relaxed. Completely relaxed. No tension. No guarded expression. No business face. Just happiness. She looks different. Emma nodded. Because she's home. The words hit harder than they should have. Because deep down, I thought she might be right. The festival setup continued until early evening. As the sun began setting, people slowly headed home. Soon only a few of us remained in the square. Sophia sat on the edge of the fountain staring at the lights hanging above Main Street. I walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee. She accepted one gratefully. Thanks. We sat in silence for a while. The comfortable kind. The kind that didn't need filling. Finally she spoke. I got another email. My stomach tightened. From New York? Sophia nodded. They need my answer tonight. There it was. The deadline. The choice. The future. Everything had finally arrived. And? She looked out across the square, toward the bookstore, toward the café, toward the life she'd built here almost by accident. I still don't know. Her voice sounded frustrated now. Not because she couldn't choose, because she couldn't understand why choosing had become so difficult. A few months ago the answer would have been obvious. Success. Money. That's very observant. Thanks. Then came the question. The question that changed everything. Emma tilted her head slightly. Why do you always eat alone? Complete silence. The café seemed to freeze. Conversations faded into the background. Even the espresso machine chose that exact moment to stop making noise. The woman didn't answer. Not immediately. She simply stood there looking at Emma. For the first time since she'd arrived in Maple Creek, her confident expression disappeared. Influence. growth. Yet now there was Maple Creek. There was Emma. There was the bookstore. There was a life that didn't look impressive on magazine covers but somehow felt more real than anything she'd left behind. The silence stretched between us. Then I asked the question she'd been avoiding. "What are you afraid of?" Sophia looked surprised, then thoughtful. Finally she laughed softly. "Honestly? Honestly." She stared into her coffee. "I'm afraid if I leave," another pause, "I won't come back." The answer settled heavily between us, because neither of us pretended it meant geography. She wasn't talking about Maple Creek. She was talking about herself, the version of herself she'd become here, the version that laughed more, smiled more, slept better, the version that wasn't lonely. Before I could respond, a familiar voice interrupted us. "There you are," we turned. "Mrs." Parker approached carrying a stack of festival schedules. She stopped when she saw our expressions, then narrowed her eyes. "What's wrong?" Neither of us answered quickly enough. "That was a mistake." "Oh no." She pointed directly at Sophia. "This is a life decision, isn't it?" Sophia blinked. "How did you know?" Mrs. Parker looked offended. "I've been alive for 72 years. Everything is either a health problem, a money problem, or a life decision." "Fair point." She sat beside us without invitation, then listened quietly while Sophia explained the situation. When the story ended, Mrs. Parker remained silent for several moments. Finally, she nodded. "I see. That's it?" Sophia asked. "That's your advice?" Mrs. Parker smiled. "No." Then she pointed toward the town square. Children playing near the fountain. Volunteers cleaning up after a long day. Friends talking beneath spring lights. Life, community, belonging. My advice is that opportunities come and go. She looked directly at Sophia. But finding people who make you happy is a lot rarer. Complete silence followed. Sophia looked away first, not because she disagreed, because she couldn't, and watching her sitting there beneath the lights of Maple Creek, I realized something important. The real choice was no longer New York versus Vermont. It was loneliness versus belonging. The problem was that Sophia hadn't figured that out yet, but she was about to, because the next morning, Emma would do something completely unexpected. And it would force Sophia Reynolds to finally decide where she truly belonged. The problem was that Sophia hadn't figured that out yet, but she was about to. Because the next morning, Emma would do something completely unexpected, and it would force Sophia Reynolds to finally decide where she truly belonged. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. The spring festival officially began at 9 o'clock. By 8:30, Main Street was already crowded. Families filled the sidewalks. Musicians tuned instruments near the bandstand. Vendors arranged flowers and handmade crafts beneath colorful tents. Maple Creek looked beautiful, alive. Like the entire town had stepped outside to celebrate the arrival of something new. Sophia arrived shortly after 9. To anyone else, she probably looked normal, calm, composed, confident. But I knew better. The decision still hung over her. New York was waiting. The offer was waiting. The future was waiting. She smiled when she saw us, but there was tension behind it, the kind that appears when a person has spent an entire night arguing with themselves. Emma noticed immediately. "Of course she did. You still haven't decided." Sophia blinked. "Good morning to you too. That's not a no." Sophia laughed softly. "No, it's not." Emma nodded as if confirming a scientific theory. Then she grabbed Sophia's hand. "Come with me." "Where?" "Secret." My stomach immediately tightened. Sophia looked at me. Should I be worried? Probably. Helpful. Emma ignored us both and pulled Sophia across the square. Curiosity eventually defeated me, so I followed. We passed the music stage, the flower exhibits, the food vendors, then continued toward the old community building near the edge of town. The place had once been a schoolhouse decades earlier. Now it was mostly used for local meetings and charity events. The doors stood open. Inside, about 30 people waited. Residents, business owners, teachers, volunteers, even Mrs. Parker,